There's a moment that changes everything. For me, it was standing in my kitchen at 3 a.m, making lasagna for my sister-in-law's birthday party, even though she'd told me just to bring a salad. My hands were shaking from exhaustion. My back ached from working a double shift, and I realized with startling clarity that nobody had asked me to do this. Nobody needed me to do this. I needed me to do this because somewhere along the way, I had convinced myself that my worth was measured by how much I could sacrifice, how much I could give, how perfectly I could meet everyone else's needs while completely ignoring my own. If you're watching this right now, maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you're the person who always says yes, even when everything inside you is screaming no. Maybe you're exhausted from constantly adjusting yourself to fit into everyone else's comfort zones. Maybe you've spent so long being what others need that you've forgotten who you actually are, underneath all those layers of people-pleasing. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready for something different. You're ready to stop abandoning yourself every time someone else needs something. You're ready to discover that your worth isn't something you have to earn through endless self-sacrifice. Let me take you back to who I was before that night in the kitchen. I was the girl who apologized for everything, even things that weren't my fault. I apologized when someone bumped into me. I apologized for having opinions. I apologized for taking up space. I was the woman who couldn't make a simple decision about where to eat dinner because I was too busy trying to figure out what everyone else wanted. I was the friend who dropped everything whenever anyone called, even if it meant canceling my own plans, sacrificing my own rest, or pushing aside my own needs. I told myself this made me kind. I told myself this made me good. I told myself this made me valuable. But here's what I didn't understand then. People-pleasing isn't actually kindness. It's fear dressed up in a pretty package. It's the terror that if we stop performing, if we stop bending ourselves into shapes that make others comfortable, we'll be rejected. We'll be too much or not enough. We'll be abandoned. We'll be unlovable. So we shrink ourselves. We silence our voices. We swallow our needs. We become experts at reading rooms, predicting moods, preventing conflicts before they even start. We become so good at anticipating what others want that we completely lose touch with what we want. The truth is, I learned to be a people pleaser long before I was old enough to understand what I was doing. I learned that my emotions made people uncomfortable, so I stopped showing them. I learned that having needs was burdensome, so I stopped expressing them. I learned that making others happy was the only reliable way to feel safe, so I made it my entire identity. By the time I reached adulthood, people-pleasing wasn't just something I did. It was who I was, and I was drowning in it. The breaking point came not just with that lasagna at 3 a.m, but with what happened the next day. I showed up to the party exhausted, with this elaborate dish that I'd poured hours into creating. My sister-in-law looked at it, said a quick thanks, and mentioned that her new diet didn't really allow for pasta anyway. No one at the party touched it. I stood there watching people eat the store-bought cake and pre-made appetizers, and something inside me cracked wide open. It wasn't her fault. She hadn't asked for this. I had done this to myself. I had sacrificed my sleep, my health, and my peace of mind for something that literally nobody wanted or needed. And I had done it because I was terrified that bringing just a salad would make me seem lazy, ungrateful, or not good enough. That's when I realized that people-pleasing wasn't protecting me from rejection. It was guaranteeing it. Because when you constantly abandon yourself to please others, you're rejecting yourself over and over again. You're telling yourself that everyone else's comfort matters more than your own. You're teaching yourself that your needs, your desires, your boundaries, and your authentic self are too risky to share with the world. And worse, you're attracting relationships where this dynamic feels normal, where others expect you to sacrifice endlessly while giving little in return. The journey from that realization to actually changing my patterns wasn't quick or easy. It started with something small. The next time my mother called asking me to help her organize her garage on my only day off, I felt that familiar panic rise in my chest. The old me would have said yes immediately, canceling my plans to rest and recharge. But this time, I paused. I felt the fear. I acknowledged it. And then I said something I'd never said before. I said, I can't do it that day, but I'm free the following weekend if that works for you. My voice shook. My hands trembled. I felt like I'd just committed an unforgivable crime. But you know what happened? My mother said fine and we rescheduled. The world didn't end. She didn't stop loving me. The sky didn't fall. And I got to spend my day off actually resting. That tiny act of prioritizing myself felt revolutionary. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. So I started experimenting with more boundaries. When a friend asked me to listen to her relationship problems for the third time that week, while I was dealing with my own crisis, I told her I didn't have the emotional capacity right now, but would love to connect the following week. When my boss tried to pile extra work on my desk at 5 o'clock on a Friday, I explained that I couldn't take it on right now without dropping something else. When someone asked my opinion, and I had one that differed from theirs, I shared it instead of just agreeing to keep the peace. Each time I set a boundary, I braced myself for disaster. Each time, I discovered that most people respected my limits far more than I expected. And the ones who didn't, the ones who got angry or pushed back or tried to make me feel guilty, they revealed themselves as people who had benefited from my lack of boundaries, who preferred the version of me that sacrificed herself for their convenience. That was painful information to receive, but it was also clarifying. It helped me understand that not all relationships are meant to survive our growth. Some people are only in our lives because we make ourselves small enough to fit their needs. When we start taking up space, when we start honoring ourselves, those relationships naturally fall away. And as scary as that is, it creates room for relationships built on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. The hardest part wasn't setting boundaries with others. It was changing the conversation I was having with myself. For decades, I'd operated on the belief that being good meant being selfless, that my value came from how useful I was to others, that taking care of myself was selfish. Undoing that programming required me to question everything I thought I knew about worth and worthiness. I had to learn that rest wasn't laziness, that having needs wasn't weakness, that saying no wasn't cruelty, that disappointing others wasn't the worst thing that could happen, but abandoning myself certainly was. I started small with self-prioritization. I began honoring my body's need for sleep instead of staying up late doing favors for others. I started eating lunch when I was hungry instead of working through it because someone else needed something. I invested in a hobby that brought me joy, even though it took time away from being available to everyone else. I learned to sit with the discomfort of someone being disappointed in me, without immediately rushing to fix it or smooth it over. I practiced tolerating other people's emotions without making them my responsibility to manage. Here's what nobody tells you about stopping people-pleasing. People will be confused at first. They'll wonder what changed. Some will push back, testing your new boundaries to see if you really mean them. Others will adjust quickly and respect the new dynamic. A few will accuse you of being selfish, which is ironic because what they really mean is that you're no longer being selfless exclusively for their benefit. You'll feel guilty. You'll second-guess yourself constantly. You'll have moments where you want to slide back into old patterns because they feel safer, more familiar, less confronting. But if you keep going, something remarkable happens. You start to remember who you are underneath all that performing. You start to hear your own voice again. You start to trust yourself. You start to build a relationship with yourself based on respect rather than abandonment. One of the most powerful shifts came when I realized that people-pleasing wasn't actually helping the people I loved. By always swooping in to fix things, by never letting anyone experience discomfort, by constantly managing everyone else's emotions, I was actually preventing them from developing their own resilience and problem-solving skills. My sister-in-law didn't need me to make elaborate dishes for her parties. My mother was perfectly capable of organizing her garage or asking other family members for help. My friend could have learned to process her relationship issues with a therapist instead of using me as an unpaid emotional dumping ground. My boss could have redistributed work more fairly instead of relying on me to pick up slack because I never said no. By endlessly accommodating, I wasn't being helpful. I was enabling dysfunctional dynamics. Learning to prioritize myself meant learning to trust that other people were capable adults who could handle their own problems, emotions, and responsibilities. It meant understanding that saying no to them was actually saying yes to their growth and autonomy. It meant recognizing that healthy relationships require both people to show up authentically, with boundaries intact, rather than one person sacrificing everything while the other takes endlessly. The transformation wasn't just external. The internal shift was even more profound. I started noticing my own preferences again. I realized I actually had opinions about things like where to eat, what to watch, how to spend my weekends. I discovered interests I'd buried decades ago. I found that when I wasn't constantly consumed with managing everyone else's needs and emotions, I had energy for my own life, my own dreams, my own growth. I started pursuing things simply because they brought me joy, not because they made me useful or valuable to others. I also had to grieve. I had to grieve the years I'd lost to people-pleasing. I had to grieve the relationships that couldn't survive my growth. I had to grieve the version of myself who believed that being small and accommodating was the only way to be loved. That grief was necessary. It cleared space for something new to emerge. A version of myself who understood that real love doesn't require self-abandonment. Real love celebrates boundaries. Real love respects autonomy. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink so others can be comfortable. Today, my life looks completely different. I have fewer friends, but the friendships I have are deeper, more reciprocal, more authentic. I have better relationships with family members because we're relating as equals rather than as user and used. I have a career where my contributions are valued and my boundaries are respected because I chose workplaces that align with those values. I have time for myself, space for myself, energy for myself, and most importantly, I like myself. I respect myself. I trust myself. Not because I'm perfect or because I never make mistakes, but because I no longer abandon myself to make others comfortable. The most unexpected gift of this journey has been discovering that the people who truly love you will love you more, not less, when you start honoring yourself. The right people aren't looking for a doormat or a servant or an emotional support system with no needs of their own. They're looking for a whole human being with boundaries, preferences, opinions, and the courage to show up authentically. When you stop people-pleasing, you give others permission to love the real you instead of the performed version. And that kind of love, while it might be less common, is infinitely more nourishing. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are not too much or not enough. You don't need to earn your worth through endless self-sacrifice. Your worth is inherent. It exists simply because you exist. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to have needs. You deserve to say no. You deserve to prioritize yourself without guilt or shame. You deserve relationships where your boundaries are respected and your authenticity is celebrated. Starting this journey doesn't mean you become selfish or cruel. It means you become honest. It means you stop lying about your capacity, your desires, and your limits. It means you start trusting that you can be loved as you are, not just for what you do. It means you begin building a life that actually fits you, rather than contorting yourself to fit a life that was never meant for you in the first place. The path forward is simple, but not easy. Start with one small boundary. Notice the fear that comes up. Set the boundary anyway. Observe what happens. Notice that most of the catastrophes you imagine don't materialize. Build on that success with another boundary. Start checking in with yourself regularly, asking what you need, what you want, what feels right. Begin treating your own needs with the same respect and urgency you've always given to others. Practice disappointing people without immediately trying to fix their disappointment. Learn to tolerate discomfort without abandoning yourself to make it go away. You will make mistakes. You'll set boundaries clumsily. You'll overcorrect sometimes, swinging too far in the other direction. You'll have moments of doubt where you wonder if you're being too rigid or too selfish. That's all part of the process. Be patient with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. Remember that you're undoing decades of conditioning. You're learning a completely new way of being in the world. That takes time. Surround yourself with people who support your growth. Find friends who celebrate your boundaries instead of punishing them. Seek out role models who demonstrate that it's possible to be both kind and boundaried, both generous and self-preserving. Consider working with a therapist who can help you navigate the deeper wounds that people-pleasing often covers up. Read books, listen to podcasts, Consume content that reinforces your worth and validates your journey. Most importantly, keep coming back to this truth. Prioritizing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot love others well if you don't love yourself. You cannot show up authentically in relationships if you're busy performing. You cannot build a meaningful life if you're living according to everyone else's expectations. The world doesn't need more martyrs. It needs more women who are brave enough to honor themselves, to speak their truth, to set their boundaries, and to live authentically. It needs you, not the people-pleasing version of you, but the real, whole, boundaried, authentic you. Your transformation starts the moment you decide that your needs matter just as much as everyone else's. It continues every time you choose yourself without guilt. It deepens every time you set a boundary and survive the discomfort that follows. It becomes permanent when you finally understand in your bones that you are worthy of love not because of what you do for others, but simply because you exist. You are enough. You have always been enough, and you deserve to live like you believe it.